Julie Kenzler, the host of the show, and I am thrilled that you are here joining us. And one of my favorite topics is definitely parenting. Having four children of my own that have gone through all kinds of different stages, I love anything about parenting. And today, our guest, Jackie Finneman, is an expert. But I love how she also says, I might be an expert on this, but it doesn't mean I'm a perfect parent. And that's one thing I love about Jackie. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Jackie is a parent coach, parenting strategist, author, podcaster, and speaker, among more. With over 50,000 hours of experience, her success with parents and children affected by trauma, breaks, and attachment, she'll explain that, and mental health diagnosis inspired her to broaden her reach and share her 30 years of experience with parents facing behavior issues. Who doesn't, as a parent who does not face behavior issues with their children, and then starting her own business, No Problem Parenting. Jackie is passionate about helping parents become confident leaders for their kids, find happiness in their day-to-day routine, and bringing peace back into their homes. Raise your hand, give an amen if everybody is excited about that. You can hear it in her podcast. You can read it in her books and see the light, the hope, the clarity that she brings to listeners, readers, and her clients. When parents feel confident, their kids' behavior improves. Jackie supports that, and she teaches and supports parents how to be the best leader and advocate for their children. Welcome, Jackie Finneman.
Oh, thanks, Julie. This is so fun to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. I love talking about parenting stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, I know.
I know I'm in the right field.
Yes, you are. I mean, 50,000 hours of coaching.
Yeah, who counts the hours, right? So way back in 1995, when I started my career as an in-home family counselor, I hadn't finished my college education, and I had been approached by a counselor who was working with a girl that I was a skills worker for, a paraprofessional for. And she said, "Why don't you come to our agency and work with us?" And I said, "I don't have a degree. I'm not done with my counseling degree." And she said, "Well, how many hours of experience do you have?" And I thought, I don't know who counts that, right? So there's like 2,040 hours in a year of full-time work year, right? So we had to figure that out. How many hours of experience did I have working in the school system as a paraprofessional and doing after school care with kiddos with mental health diagnoses? And we discovered that I had almost 9,000 by the time I was 22 years old, almost 23.
Wow.
And so I ended up getting the job with that counseling agency and then became a mental health practitioner and never went back and got my degree.
Wow. But it's all based on those hours.
It was the
It
experience.
got
And
you into that
I'm a
experience.
kinesthetic or a hands-on learner. There's visual learners, audio learners. I'm kinesthetic. I want to be in the trenches. I want to be observing. I want to be doing. And that's how I learn best. And so I had many, I'm going to be 50 in April. And I had many opportunities to go back and get a degree and become a therapist. And I just really, my heart is in helping parents in the day in, day out, real life struggles in their home outside of the therapy office.
Oh, so needed. Well, I know for myself, my husband and I, at one point, we did hire a parenting coach, and she is specifically teenagers.
Hmm.
And this is a long time ago, and I had not even known of your business, but what a tremendous help I found it was. And it was for, as my intro said about you, it was helping my husband and I to become the best advocates, become the best leader as parents, because we were kind of like, we surrender. We don't know what to do anymore. We need someone to help us.
Well, and you just kind of need that person to be able to share a situation, what's going well, what didn't go well, what are you struggling with, and just like kind of almost a mediator between you and your spouse sometimes too, or if you're co-parenting, and be like, what's the best approach for us to handle this? Or can mom handle it one way and dad handle it another, or do we all need to be on the same page? And I typically say parents are struggling with one of three things. You're either being too nice, too mean, or you're trying to solve a problem that you don't have experience in,
Hmm.
and you're trying to do it alone. And so I commend you and your husband for, at one point just going, hey, these teenage years are rough. We want to make sure we keep connection with our kids and we don't push them away or put
Right.
walls up. So we're going to reach out and get some support. So good for you.
Yes. Well, we did go through some counseling as well, but I really found the counseling did help our son. It was really for one of our four kids that we really were having some struggles with, but that was helpful. But the parenting, the coaching was just kind of gave my husband and I action items,
Yeah.
what we could do. So let's talk about then the difference between a parent coach and a parent strategist.
For me, and I think this can be different depending on who you talk to. Everybody kind of puts their take or their spin on it. For me, I do 90-minute strategy sessions where I'll have the parents on, and most of them are virtual. I don't, in fact, Julie, I almost never meet kids. I almost never meet the children in the home. It's really about me pouring into mom and dad. So the strategy session, we're going to go through the behavior that you want to target or tackle, right? Or the concern. And then we're
Right.
going to we're going to go backwards from there. I'm going to start at sort of the beginning and we're going to say, when did this start to become a problem, and what kinds of tools and tips and techniques and resources can we pull together to help you solve whatever that problem is that's going on. At No Problem Parenting, we turn problems into no problem. I'm not over here going, oh, no problem. Kids will misbehave, whatever. It's not like that. But in the actual definition of a problem, the word problem, if you look it up, it's a matter or situation that's harmful or unwanted or unwelcome, right? That's needing to be dealt with and overcome.
Hmm.
And so that's what we do here at No Problem Parenting. And that we can set up a strategy session. You can meet me one time and I can give you enough tools and resources for you to deal with and overcome a specific problem. Or we can do coaching, which is more of a weekly or every other week interaction where I'm going to share some skills and tools. I'm going to pour into you, and then you're going to go practice. And then you're
Right.
going to come back the next week. And then we're going to talk about, did it work or not? And of
I
course,
like that. You
I love
have two
it when
different options.
yes, and I love it when it works, of course, right, Julie?
Of course.
But I also, I'm kind of weird. I also love it when it doesn't work because then we can get to the real root of what's going on and what's underneath there, and I can help you tweak the way that you're communicating and the different strategies that you need, you're using with your kids.
Well, sometimes we don't know what is going to work till we try things that don't work.
Mhm.
I mean, right? Well, and I love how you are all about promoting the solution, not the problem. Let's focus on the solution. So, how do you go about? I know I didn't really mention that we would talk about this, but I am curious. How do you go about once parents have shared their behavior issues of their children? Then, how do you go about finding a solution? Do you give them options, or how do you do that?
So I begin with mindset, and that's what No Problem Parenting. I have an online course and it's just 96 minutes total. So sometimes parents are like, I don't want to do a course, or I don't want to be committed to, 8 weeks or 12 weeks. I got too much on my plate. I just
Mhm.
want some quick information. So I had noticed over the first 5 years of having Hello World, before I created No Problem Parenting, I noticed some common themes that I was saying in my coaching sessions with families. And so I reviewed hundreds of hours of sessions with families and pulled out those common themes. And the three themes ended up being: seek first to understand. We got to figure out that root of the behavior. 90% of the time, and I just made that stat up in my experience, 90% of the time, the actual behavior, the wet noodle tantrum on the floor, or the rolling your eyes, slam the bedroom door, stomp out of the room, that's not the problem. There's something going on underneath that we want to get to the root of. So we not only want to seek first to understand, why is my child behaving the way they are? We want to figure out as the parent, why am I responding or reacting to that problem the way that I am? So that's step one. And then in step two, I was like, you know what? I'm constantly saying to parents, what is your biggest fear about this problem? What are you afraid of? What are you worried about? Because a lot of times parents will come to me, even at their kids 5 years old, and they're misbehaving, at risk of getting kicked out of daycare or kindergarten. And the parents are thinking they're going to go down this dark hole and, be falling off the deep end as teenagers, and they're going to struggle their whole life. I'm like, let's not go into the future. Let's slow down and say, what can we prepare for if the child misbehaves or struggles in the way that you're afraid of? Not like what's the worst that could happen, but kind of like, how do we prepare for that when it does happen so that we can respond to it instead of reacting or overreacting to it, right? We can respond with confidence. And then step three is to change the conversation. I believe that we are giving our kids way too much unconditional praise. And that throws parents for a curveball sometimes, because of course we want to encourage our kids and be positive and supportive, right? But we are giving way too much unconditional praise, so much so that our kids aren't believing it themselves. And then does it really matter? What matters is if they feel it from the inside out. So I teach about conditional positives and conditional praise, which is factual. We start with the facts, something they can go, oh yeah, I guess I am good at that. Oh, I guess I do look nice when I wear that. Oh, like something that they can believe in. So they believe us. Then you can pour on the unconditional.
Those are good examples, the last part there. But so that is really the essence of no problem parenting. That is your philosophy and
Right.
how you approach finding solutions for parents. I love that. That is so great. Well, let's talk about I don't remember which podcast of yours, which by the way, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, friends that are watching, you'll see all the information about Jackie's her website, her book, No Problem Parenting. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but here is her website. Just so much information there. And her podcast is so fun and they're not long. And she has, how many episodes are you at? 150, 250?
No, I think, well, we're about 123. I think 123 aired today. But yeah, we hit top 3% of podcasts. We're close to 10,000 downloads. And so that's super exciting. I just started, I guess we're coming up on 2 years in April. But I didn't ever realize that the podcast would have guests. When I thought of doing a podcast, I decided I wanted to pour out some tips and tools and some free resources to parents who weren't sure if coaching was right for them or just didn't have the means. And so it was my way of being able to give back. Plus, I'm a talker. So I thought, oh, this will be super easy. Well, a month into doing it, right? A month into doing the podcast, people were reaching out to me asking to be guests on my show. And I thought, how do you even know I have a show? Like, is anybody listening yet? Fast forward a year and a half, and I have interviewed over 100 guests that have something to do with some service or product or resource that supports parents and kids and families. And I'm absolutely loving that. So yeah, that's called the No Problem Parenting Podcast.
Yes, No Problem Parenting Podcast. And so I really encourage you, friends that are watching, go listen to some of her podcasts. Whether you have children or not, there's some really great tips. And you probably know people who have children. You were a child. I mean, there's just so many great guests that you have, so many incredible topics. But one thing that you talked about was a woman who becomes a parent and she has this newborn, this baby, and people that judge them. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that was my Mother's Day special that I did last year. Added a little bonus special in there. When our son was born, so we have one child and we have two angel babies. My mom had passed away right after I miscarried the first time. She passed away a few months later. And I was kind of at ease and at peace because I thought, well, mom's up in heaven and mom's got the baby. So that's okay, right? And then about a year and a half later, we had Andrew, and he was born extra early. And I had my first child without my mom here, and my mom and I were really close. So that was tricky. That was tough. And then a couple of years later, we miscarried again. And then I said, all right, mom, that's enough. Like, you're getting greedy here, taking
Oh,
another baby.
oh, that sense of
But
humor is precious.
I just remember being in church one day, on Mother's Day, my very first Mother's Day, and my husband intended to be home for it, but he was at opener fishing. That's a big deal in Minnesota. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
was gone. Yeah, so he was gone, and I thought, that's okay. I've got this tiny little month and a week, like 5-week-old baby, and I'm going to church. I feel good. I'm, bundled him up, swaddled him up. And I get into church, and like not even 20 minutes in, he became super fussy. And I think the little swaddler I had him in, he wasn't comfortable. He maybe wanted to feed. I don't know. But I just thought, I'm trying to settle him. And I could settle a baby. I mean, I've been around kids since I was babysitting at the age of 9. I could always settle a baby. And here I am with my own, and I'm in church, and I couldn't do it. And I had to leave church. And people were looking at me. And, you've got those empathetic moms that look at you and go, oh, I've been there. But I couldn't believe how many there were that were like, geez, quiet your baby down. Or, those looks that you get, like, we're in church trying to pray. And so anyway, maybe it was me interpreting it, but the looks and the feeling I got in that specific situation. And there were other ones, being in the store, different
Right.
things. But I thought,
Yeah,
how
when
could
your kid has a tantrum.
yeah, how could people be so judgy? So I ended up leaving church that day. But then I decided, about 9 months into Andrew's life, I thought, I'm not going to worry so much what other people say. I'm going to be super confident in who I am, whether he's misbehaving or he's, having a meltdown. And so I vowed to do that. And one of the parenting programs that I used to teach, I still do, is Becoming a Love and Logic Parent. And I just loved that program. So I used that so much with my son. And I remember him being a 2-year-old throwing a fit in Target because he wanted, they put all those little toys as you're checking out, all the
Yes.
little trinkets and things. He wanted one of those. And so I just took the toy. I put all my stuff on the conveyor belt. I took his toy and I put his toy at the end. And then as the lady cashier rang up all of my stuff, I said, this little guy here wants this toy. I'm not sure how he's going to pay for it, but he really wants that toy. So maybe he'll do some chores for you, or he'll do, and I paid for my stuff. And then he had to look at, well, of course he was young and little and he was a little freaked out by that. So he followed me out of the store and it was no problem. But there were other times when he'd scream and cry, and I'd say, buddy, I don't think they can hear you in aisle 9. You might need to scream louder. Instead of trying to shush my child because I'm embarrassed or I'm upset. Now, I wouldn't do that one in church because I wouldn't want him to scream louder in church, right?
Right, right.
We would exit stage left, and I have techniques and things to do for that too. But yeah, it can be really tricky to be a mom of a new or multiples and just feel like you're doing all the things and people are being judgy. When you can step into your own and be confident about, your child's going to misbehave sometimes, they're going to have meltdowns, they're going to be tired or whatever. You can
Right.
embrace that and be really confident about who you are in that and not worry so much what other people think.
I love that. That is so good because it is such a. I remember having my first child and feeling so insecure about if he cried or misbehaved, and he was actually a really great kid. But I myself now, whenever a mom has a crying baby, even toddler, a crying baby or toddler at church, I will always look over to them and I will always say, it is okay. It does not bother us. If it bothers anyone, just ignore them. You take care
Yeah.
of your baby however you need to, because
Mhm.
they're not going to be like this forever.
Right, right, exactly. It goes
Yes,
super fast. Our son is 17, and so I've learned that. It's just like all of a sudden, everybody warns you and tells you that's gonna happen.
I know. I know. Oh, goodness, you're going to be 50. And now is he graduating from high school this year?
Yes, yep, this is his senior year. Yep.
So you're going to be 50 and you're going to be an empty nester.
Yes, that's a really good
Well,
topic to bring up too. There are people that really
yeah.
struggle with the empty nest, like because especially when you've had multiples. And I don't know if it's especially, but when you have multiples, and then there are people that are just waiting for the day that their kids will finally launch and they can kind of get them out the door because they're just done with them. Again, that is very unique to you and your family situation, but your own personal dreams and goals as a mom. Some moms raise their kids to be very reliant on them because they want to keep them close, and other moms raise their kids to be super independent. And then there's some of us that are in the middle. So I know I'm going to grieve when he's actually out of the house. I know there will be some grief about
Yes,
that, but more so I'm excited for him
right.
in his future. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you can get to a peaceful moment like that. That's a successful moment as a parent. That's
Yeah.
what we want. And that's what God gave them to us for the
Mm.
time that we have them in our homes, and to love on them, pray for them, raise them,
Yes.
and then they go. So I know one thing, I was fine when my youngest went off to college. It was just 2 hours away. But
Yeah.
then when my daughter moved across the country, it was like I was feeling it a whole different level of grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's when we decided to start traveling and went on our first trip to Europe. So plan some kind of trip that you guys can go on, you and your husband.
Yes, we're going to have to do that and get reconnected. I mean, we started having kids later in life because we wanted to, do all the fun things before we settled down and did that. And then now we're like, wait, what did we used to do again? What did we find fun? So you do have to almost, it's like riding a bike, I'm sure. We'll get to that. Um,
Yes. Well, it will be great. And I'm excited for you because I think that 50 is the best ever, and just do a lot of fun things. Yes. Well, okay. So let's talk about the 6 second pause. I like that.
Yeah. So, a lot of times we're hustle and bustle and busy, and whether you have young kiddos or you have older kiddos, we get pressured in the day to day routine, the busyness of life. And sometimes that makes us more frustrated when our kids try to slow us down, either by not doing something we ask them to do or just being slower about getting into the car or getting their shoes on or packing up their school bag or whatever it is. So when I was teach parents, before you yell or lose your cool, take 6 seconds to pause. There's research on this. When you put your hand on your heart and your hand on your stomach, number one, you can't help but make yourself take a breath. And like I said, there's research on this, and it helps us to shift from the back part of our brain, that fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain, to the front part of our brain, or our prefrontal cortex, the logic part of our brain. So it calms us. It calms our amygdala. And I point to the middle of our head because the amygdala, it's not really the middle of our head, but the amygdala is the smoke detector in your brain that says, warning, 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 incoming danger.
Mhm.
And in an instant, we can just by like when you're feeling like there's danger or you're super upset or angry, you do this to calm yourself down and put yourself in that front part of your brain to say, hey, is this something I need to be reacting to in the moment right now? Or is this something that can wait? Can I have this conversation later? Do I just need to get everybody in gear? Or do I need to pour on a bunch of idle threats about if they don't hurry up or get in the car, I'm gonna, or they're not gonna, how we do all those things. We start consequencing right in the heat of the moment. And it's like, what do I need you to do? I need you to get in the car. So I start with that 6 second pause to prepare yourself as the parent so you can parent confidently and in calmly. Now, I will say this, I'm going to interject. We can't be calm all the time. Sometimes
Mhm.
situations warrant us to be not calm. And at No Problem Parenting, it's okay to yell. Sometimes kids, we need to be firm and we need to yell, but it's how much in control of your own body are you when you're doing those things. So we want to make sure that if you're yelling, it's an intentional yelling. It's not an out of control yelling. Does
So
that make
what would
sense?
be an example? Yeah, what would be an example of that?
So when I'm reeling a kid in that is maybe not listening, I'm directing them to do something. Now, even my own son, when I would say it's time to pick up your toys, and he'd throw down on the floor and he wouldn't want to pick up the toys, or he'd ignore me altogether, right? I could get frustrated and start amping up my voice and say, now pick up those toys right now and go over, and I could get all upset and frustrated about it.
Mhm.
Or I could say, what did I ask you to do? What do I want you to do? And as he's throwing a fit or a tantrum, I can give him permission to do that. And I can say, hey, looks like you need to have a little fit before you pick up the toys. No problem. Let me know when you're ready.
Mhm.
Right. Sometimes, if there's another kid involved, or there's someone and he's being kind of, out of control, or there's a risk of him hurting himself or another kid or whatever, I might actually physically go over and sit him down by me and say, hey, enough, stop, and put my hand up and have him do a sit. I do a thing called a sit in the chair technique with the little ones, or for the older ones, just to go sit, not a timeout, but just to take a break and sit and get it together. And I might be more firm about that.
Right.
And
Sure.
my voice is going to change for that. Once they've done it, though, I don't have to keep being mad or firm. Once they pull it together, I can say, hey, thanks for getting it together. Come on over and clean up your toys. Or thanks for letting me know you're ready. You're calm now. I can tell you're ready
Right.
to do it. Calm doesn't mean all the tears are gone. Calm doesn't mean they have a smile on their face. They can still be really bucky, you know, but you just don't have to put as much emotion and negative or angry energy into the situation. Does that make
And
sense?
how that can totally deflect something from escalating.
Oh,
And
for
and
sure.
how then we are the ones who are setting that mood.
Yes.
Incredible as the parent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
It's okay for our kids to be upset or mad when we're telling them to stop doing something or asking them to do something that they don't want to do. We just don't have to get mad right with it. We can be
Right.
annoyed, we can be frustrated, but we don't have to pour a bunch of that energy in there. And
Great information.
yeah, so there's lots of little tweaks and things that we do depending on the age of the kid, depending on the mental health of the child, depending on the developmental stage the child's in. Not everybody develops, as the same as others. So just because you're 3 doesn't mean you're, having these tantrums, or just because you're a teenager doesn't mean you're ready to drive. Our 16-year-old doesn't mean you're ready to drive. It depends on, the kid's personality, their behavior, where they're at emotionally and all of that. So parents
Exactly.
shouldn't feel bad if they try a technique and it doesn't work. It might need
Nor
to be.
should they feel bad when we mess up. And that's what I love about forgiveness and restarts. And God forgives us when we mess up. We need to forgive ourselves and ask our child to forgive us when we mess up.
And
I
that is
love
a really good point. That is a super good point. That's one of my favorite things to teach, actually, Julie. So thanks for mentioning that. I did a podcast episode called I'm Sorry Isn't Enough. And that's where I introduced the make it right technique. And it really is not just about forgiveness, but it's not just about saying sorry as enough. Like, let's do something to make it up to the person that we've offended, harmed, wronged,
that.
disobeyed, whatever, you know?
I
And we
love
can do
that.
it in a way that the child then feels really good about it. Oh, we could talk forever.
I know. That's great. No, I actually have a folder this thick of all my kids' apology letters because I had to
Oh,
write. Well, we're about to wrap up, and I really encourage you, friends, to go check out her website, her podcast, and the book. I'm excited to be a part of the next book. But our big idea says for today, have a few dollar bills in your car ready to hand out to those in need. That's a great idea. A few dollars doesn't hurt. Well, Jackie, thank you again for being here, and I'm going to wrap up in prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this time that we could be together and we can learn so much more about the better parents that you need us to be and want us to be, and to reach out for help. And I thank you for all that Jackie is doing to help parents. In Jesus' name, amen.
amen.
So glad we had this time. I think we're going to have to do it again and do another episode with you because It's just a blast talking with you, Jackie.
I would love to. And I know you're going to be on my podcast as well. And I just thank you for the
Yay!
opportunity to be on your show, Julie. Just keep going. You put out such great content. I love it.
Thank you. All right. God bless you. Bye,
Bye bye.
everybody.